know me. Tell me, baby, what's it gonna be? My poor heart was broken 'cause of you. Oh, pretty baby, what you trying to do? I know you've been messing around. The word is out all over town. I'm doing it new. I'm doing it new.
Alright, hello there, thrill seekers. Ancient alien theorists say yes, indeed they do. And that song you just heard was called Bluer Than Blue, and it was originally by the Rubber City Rebels, who were a band from Akron, Ohio, as the name of the band should imply if you know anything about Akron, Ohio. And the original version, their version, which came out on their 1980 album, just called Rubber City Rebels, it's has a kind of Ramones, Sex Pistols sort of delivery to it. But one time I was listening to that song and I realized that underneath that sort of delivery is this kind of 60s garage rock tune along the lines of something by The Seeds or I don't know, Dave Clark 5 or dang, who else? One of these kind of grungy rockin' bands from the 60s. So I decided to redo it and recast it in that style, and that's what you saw and heard. And that was special effects done by me yesterday afternoon in my living room. So pretty neat, huh? Whoa! The flower liked it. So I got a question recently, and I'd like to talk about it because it's sort of a perennial question for me. It's a variation on a question that comes up all the darn time, and I've addressed it many times on this YouTube channel, but it seems like every time I address it in one way, somebody finds another angle to ask the same question. Ziggy's over there being very curious about something that's going on by the door, apparently. There's a little door that goes out, but I hope he can't get through. He's sticking his nose through, but he can't get the rest of him through. Anyway, so here's the question. It seems like I need loved ones in my life to be happy. You briefly discussed a need for human connection in your video Solitary Zen, but what about the old Buddhist sutra, and then this is in quotes, to depend on others is unstable? And another quote, the foundation of the self is only the self. And he says, I'm reading from Opening the Hand of Thought. So I don't know where those quotes came from. I don't know if they originate from Kosho Uchiyama, the contemporary. He died in, 1980, something like that? So a contemporary Zen teacher, or if it's an ancient statement, but it doesn't matter. He says, is it a matter of finding balance between depending on others for happiness and finding happiness within myself? Be an island unto myself, or no man is an island? And this is, like I say, this question comes up a lot. I addressed it at one point on this video channel in terms of solitary retreats. And I remember in that video talking about how I was surprised the first time I heard somebody ask me a question about doing solitary retreats, because we just don't do that in the Zen tradition. I understand now that it's something that's done in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, but I've never heard of it done in the Zen tradition. Zen is always a communal thing. That is to say, you can do Zazen by yourself alone, which I do every day, which I did, an hour ago or whatever it was, and I'll do again tonight. So I do solitary Zen in that sense. Only Ziggy's around. Sometimes my wife is around, but solitary otherwise. But as an overall practice, Zen is always a community thing. There's Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha are the three things you're supposed to revere in Buddhism, and Sangha is the community. So there's always a communal aspect, and I think that this was one of the important turning points that made Buddhism what it is, which is that the Buddha, when he was doing his practice, he did practice with the 5 guys that he went around with, and they didn't have burgers and fries. But at some point he separated from those guys and went off alone and practiced by himself. And that was the point at which he had his awakening experience, his great awakening. After having his great awakening, he is said to have briefly considered the idea of just keeping this all to himself, because he figured nobody's going to understand this, nobody's going to get it, nobody's going to want to do the work to get there, to get where I've gotten, so I'm just going to keep it to myself and enjoy it. But legend has it that the god Indra prevailed upon him and said, no, you got to teach this to the people. I don't really believe the god Indra literally came down and talked to him. But I do feel that he must have had a sense that there was something to teach, and doing it communally was the way to do it. So he set up a group and he taught communally. And then from then on, it's always been like that. There are a few examples in the literature of great Buddhist teachers who, meditated off in a cave or a hut in the middle of nowhere, who were basically hermits. But in all of those stories, at least the ones that sort of come to mind right now as I'm making this video, you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong or if I've missed somebody. In all of the stories that I'm aware of, they do this for a little while and then they return to the world. And returning to the world is an important part of the practice. So being in community. Now, this idea of depending on others, though, I don't feel, and I've never felt, that was sort of thing like you can't count on anybody, or you can't have friends, or you can't love anybody, or you can't have companions. I'm married, so I have at least one companion almost all the time, and I have friends, and I'm going to go see a bunch of them in Europe in a few days. So I have a community of people around me, so I don't feel that this depending on others is that kind of depending on others. What does it say? To depend on others is unstable. So to me, what that means is depending on others to tell you the truth. So there's a kind of a sense that we humans have of, we don't know, I think any of us really, what this world is that we're living in and what this body-mind we are manifesting actually is. So we depend on others to tell us what it is. So we get it from our parents, from our schooling, from our religious teachers, from books we read, and we get their idea of what we are. And as long as you depend on that, as long as you are kind of relying on that in the sense of like, I need that, you're going to be unstable. This might be controversial to say, but I'll try it out anyway. One of the ways this came to be very clear to me was, let's say, 2.5 years ago, when a lot of the media was, and the governments and everybody was kind of going crazy trying to create a situation of extreme fear in the minds of everybody in the world. And then trying to come in and say, look to us. We will tell you how to deal with this problem. Look only to us. Do not try to figure it out yourself. We will figure it out. We will tell you how to deal with this problem. And very powerful people with huge connections, and people with a highly developed skill for persuasion built up through years and years of studying how advertising works effectively and how getting clicks and hits and things works effectively. So these were the most cunning people among us, were trying to tell us, we know what's best. We are going to tell you, and you darn well better not try to figure it out for yourself. And even I got caught up in this, but it very quickly became clear, number one, that these people didn't know any better than me what was going on for the most part, in a fundamental way. In a fundamental way, I'm talking. You know, they might have known this or that or the other thing that I didn't know, but I could glean that information in the fundamental way of how should I respond to this fear they're trying to soak me in. They didn't know. They had no idea. They were as dependent upon others as anybody else, and it was an unstable situation. So the only way that I was going to survive, and I mean literally survive, this situation was to take it upon myself to understand what I needed to do and how I needed to respond to this situation, and stop depending on others. Stop even listening to them. So that's what's meant by depending on others. It's not an idea that you don't have loved ones or you don't care about anybody. I'm sure the Buddha cared about the people in his Sangha. I'm sure Dogen, who lived in the mountains with a bunch of, sweaty dudes up there in the middle of nowhere, he must have formed relationships with those people. He must have had friends among them. He must have shared their joys and griefs and things just like you do with any group of friends, but they had a set formalized structure to live under. Even so, things happen in those settings. So he wasn't removing himself from the company of others or removing himself from caring about others or loving others or even in a sense depending on others, because that's why there's a group of people in the mountains. Because one person living in the mountains alone can be done, but it's very difficult. But if you have a group of people and you can specialize, and as they did, and people do certain tasks, you can work much more efficiently, and everybody benefits from that, and everybody depends on everybody else. So depending on others was something that he did. It was not this kind of idea that you throw away everyone. We are social animals. Human beings are built in such a way that we have to depend on other human beings. We don't survive otherwise. I've used this example before, but if you hear about a human who lived 5 years alone in the mountains with no contact with anybody else, you're like, whoa. But if you hear about a tiger that did that, or a bear, you'd be like, yeah, that's just what they do. So human beings are uniquely tied in with each other, not uniquely as in the sense that there are other primates who do this, or ants do this, or bees do this, but it's one of the things that's a facet of our humanity, and we can't just toss that aside. And that's not what the Buddhists are asking us to do. They are asking us not to rely on somebody else to give us the truth. So, for example, even though I hold Dogen in very high regard, I realize I can only learn so much from Dogen. And even though I held my in-person teachers, still hold them in very high regard, there's only so much I can learn from them. Nishijima Roshi was an elderly Japanese man. He had a different life experience. He served in World War II, for gosh sakes. It's a totally removed, on the other side, in World War II. So it's a totally removed experience. So what I can learn from him, I have to try to apply to myself. And even though my first teacher, Tim, and I were much closer, we're both from Ohio, we're both within 10 years, he's about 10 years older than me. We're close in age, but even that, he was a different person, and I had to figure out how I could apply this teaching and not just try to take it from him. Another little aspect of this is, don't be scared by what you read in the literature. Like, I don't know, I'm not projecting this onto the writer of this, but I've had this feeling myself where I've read something in an ancient Buddhist scripture and been like, oh my God, and I get to be like, oh, that's the truth, but I'm worried about it because I don't understand it, or it makes a demand upon me that I'm not prepared to do. don't be scared of that. Don't depend on others in that sense, of saying that whatever's in the Buddhist literature must be true, even if it is true, even if you adopt the position that everything Dogen said, or whoever's your hero said, is the truth. You also, I think, have to adopt the position that even though everything they say is the truth, even though everything in the Bible is true, I might not understand it, or I might misinterpret it. So don't depend on others in that sense, and don't depend on authority figures to tell you what life is for you, because they cannot do it. So don't depend on it. So there you go. That's how I interpret that, and I hope I didn't offend anybody or bother anybody with what I said. But if you were bothered by it, okay. I don't know what to do. I'm sorry. I apologize. So I will be in Europe in a few days, and the dates are appearing on your screen. I will be in Finland, Germany, France, Belgium, and England. And if you want more information, you can go to the website that's appearing on your screen, hardcorezen.info/events, hardcorezen.info/events, and that has clickable links for all of the events, at least the ones I have clickable links for. It has them in there, so you can find out where and when I will be and how to be there yourself if you want to be. And also the song that I put on there, I have already uploaded as a separate video, so if you want to see the whole song, just look for Bluer Than Blue on this channel, and you can see the whole darn song with me, three me's dancing around like in a 60s TV show. Also, if you want to support me doing more dancing around in videos, you can go to the URL you're seeing on the screen below, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. You will find there my PayPal and Patreon account information, and those are my main ways of making a living. Like I keep saying, I'm going to get paid for most of the events I'm doing in Europe, but even so, it's not going to be enough to make a living. I'm not doing Eckhart Tolle sort of numbers. I heard he got paid something like 300,000 euros for a talk that he did in Germany. This is a rumor that I heard. I don't get paid anything like that, so I still depend on your support. So depending, there you go. And I appreciate it, so thank you very much for that. But as always, this is offered for free, so you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. We will see you next time. Have a good time all the time, and remember, ancient astronaut theorists say yes. How you doing there, Zygmunt? Enjoying being outside in the shade? Thanks for coming out with me. At first he didn't want to come out with me because it's kind of hot out, but he came out. He hung out in the shade and not with me in the sun. Alright, we'll go back inside now, Zig, okay?